Hello everybody, I'm Brad Parkinson and I'm your host for Planet Health Project. I'm here with my partner in wellness, Mr. Shannon Burford, and this is about episode number 17, I believe. How you going, Shannon?
Hey Brad, how are you? I'm super well.
That's good to hear.
And I'm sure you too.
Yeah, look, I'm considering the times we're recording this, I'm doing pretty good actually, pretty good. Isolated, but not too socially isolated. I'm here now talking with you, so that's always a good thing. And I think Zoom's just taken off with everything, and even consultations and all, so it's a great thing. Now today we're going to talk about rheumatoid arthritis. So this is a very common presentation in clinic for both of us, Shannon. I do a lot of autoimmune patients, and so do you. And you've got quite a bit of experience with this one as well. So I'm really keen to hear some of that experience and how you approach it, and some of your knowledge on the topic itself. So let's start off, I guess, explain to those watching what rheumatoid arthritis is all about, and you know, what's your understanding of this condition.
Sure, let's dive in. Thanks everyone for watching, and we're really blessed to have you watching this and sharing our experience with you to improve things. But when patients come, I think the biggest thing that I hear is that they feel that they're not doing as much as what they could be, because the tools in the heroic medicine style is very limited, and really the most common protocol is just to suppress the immune system and use steroids and a few little bits around the edge. But the patients are getting their liver enzymes monitored with their bloods, and they're getting the regular blood work and wondering, why am I doing this when it's potentially damaging my liver, and what more can I do? And that's where we come in, because as you know, there is a lot that can be done. But how does it present? The patients will get to the point when their pain levels are just too much, and they're feeling tired every day, and they're finding in the morning a lot of stiffness before they get going, and painful joints in their feet or legs or hips. They could be having some cardiovascular symptoms and just feeling really below average. And they walk in whether they've got assistance with walking sticks or wheelchair, or they are just walking and standing up and sitting down very slowly. But that's how they're presenting. They will have their blood work and test, and yeah, so I'm not sure more what to add there, but generally the highlight is pain.
Pain, stiffness of the joints, yeah, and it can be what I've seen presented in case too, like your back and your hip and so forth. So quite commonly it'll be picked up with your fingers and wrists and so forth. Knees can be problematic, but quite often it's the joints and the fingers that are often a focus of this condition. Now, causal factors, Shannon, we know it's an autoimmune disease, and there's always debates whether, you know, how that may be triggered, and you know, genetics comes into play as well. What's your take on perhaps some of the causes behind this condition?
Yeah, I think the mainstream medicine and the endocrinologists and rheumatologists, etc., are slowly, the newer, younger practitioners are catching up, but still they're a bit slow to adopt that autoimmune protocol. But without a doubt, it's very effective. So the causes lumped in with that autoimmune protocol is always gut, and then that leakage of toxins through the blood. So I guess just summarize it as one word is toxicity. And that can include heavy metals, food, the toxins from certain foods like the Solanaceae family, and a leaky gut, that common term, the intestinal hyperpermeability.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are environmental toxins too, of chemicals, and smoking is another one, self-induced, I think, and a genetic predisposition as well,
Yep.
which kind of gives rise to that level of toxicity.
I think you touched on leaky gut there, intestinal hyperpermeability. I think it's a big one because that's where different proteins can cross the gut wall, or that protective barrier. Especially if we're stressed, we don't have the secretory IgA, that mucin layer protecting our gut mucosa, and the intestinal cells open up and these protein complexes come through, and this is why we see quite often gluten or gliadins in different grains provoke their immune response because they're seen as invaders, and then they end up in the joints quite often, and that's where that immune reaction occurs. And quite often that connection to the gut isn't made, especially in orthodox or conventional medicine, and they're usually looking at systemic inflammation, which is obviously a part of it, but the causal factor is quite often that leaky gut, and needing to repair that is really a priority, and even reducing inflammation at that level, at the gut, the surface of the gut, I've found very critical. And it's quite often you get those gut issues coincide with the pain and the severity of pain with the joints too. So it's a great point that you make. What about testing? What sort of testing perhaps that before they even come to you, they may have had done, and what can we draw on from that? Like, is there enough information there, or do we then need to do more testing? And do you have some particular favourite tests that you find help you better treat the condition?
We can definitely add to what they've already had done. Usually patients will present and they'll have, if it's very severe joint deterioration, they'll have x-rays to see how much damage has happened to the joints. And then they'll of course have inflammatory markers, the CRP and the ESR, and they'll have full bloods, and they'll be on medications. So they'll be monitoring their liver function and renal function and making sure that their immune system is still just surviving enough, and there's no severe damage going on. But I've definitely seen a lot of patients where their liver enzymes are just way off the chart, and it's kind of a trade-off between their medications and the damage to their liver. And then other ones that they would have had done, they would have had the rheumatoid factor, which is specific. They may have had ANA, which is very generalized. And what more can we do? And then they'll just be monitoring those blood work, just to be sure that inflammation is being kept as low as possible and the damage is not occurring. My favorites are definitely a microbiome test, because it just shows so much. And now they even have a section, well, for the last year, I think, of specific potential autoimmune organisms, which is great to see and show the patient, hey, look, we've got this intestinal permeability, and just like you said, the IgA is low, and there's a penetration and there's an excess of these potential pathogenic or autoimmune organisms. And then we do our work on the gut to remove those. And my favorite, heavy metal testing, because heavy metals don't help anyone. And throw a little bit of arsenic or cadmium or lead, and it's going to exacerbate the symptoms.
And what tests are good for heavy metal testing? I know that there's urinary tests, hair analysis. I think there may be blood analysis too. What do you find successful in testing there?
I'm a big fan of the hair, just purely because it's non-invasive, it's relatively easy, and it's cost-effective. So currently I'm using one here in WA, and they charge $99 for the patient. Yep. That's for very, very basic raw data that we'll use and I'll interpret. But yeah, if someone wants to see pre-chelation and post-chelation, we can do urinary. I have seen some people that haven't had any hair, and so we've done the urinary. The bloods are possible, but they're very limited with doing only specific heavy metals and some minerals like zinc, but it can add up and be very expensive because each test is, say, $50, and then you're doing 5 or 10, and it's quickly adding up. And you can even do stool heavy metals.
Yeah, I have seen that. I haven't investigated that myself, but definitely aware of the urinary ones, and done a few hair analysis tests as well. So that's great, Shannon. That covers a lot of the, I think, testing that can be done and needed. And of course, going back to good case taking, quite often with these patients, I've found that you'll do some case history, and there's been some obvious exposure over a period of time to certain things, and then you can deduce that that's probably been a factor. Which is quite often the case with a lot of autoimmune conditions, exposure to some sort of toxins, and you often find that with thyroid as well. Okay, and some treatments that we can talk about too, or perhaps even treatments that, conventional treatments that these patients might be on, and how we might integrate our treatments maybe with those, or or support their treatments. Like you mentioned, the livers can be under a bit of a load as well. And obviously what sort of things we aim at doing as well. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I said at the beginning that I get so excited, and because there's so much we can do, and that includes the medication that they're on. It's relatively straightforward because there's no real side effects. We're just going to improve the function of those medicines, and we're going to get better results for the patient, and so they're going to be happier, and
so no side effects,
etc.
No side effects from what we do when we but they can often have side effects from the medications that they might
yes on. Most definitely, yes, and quite severe ones. So that's where it's brilliant, because we'll be able to protect, and we'll be able to bring in herbs to protect the liver and increase the function, and so that's just going to be a benefit for their hormones and their guts and the clearance of the toxins.
Excellent.
Yeah, so so they'll be on some over-the-counter Panadol or Nurofen, etc., and then they'll be on some steroids as well, and they'll be on, the most common one I see is methotrexate.
Okay.
And then they'll usually lower. They'll add a few. So like in the topical news now with a hydroxychloroquine for coronavirus, which is Plaquenil, the brand name, or one brand name, is the anti-malarial. And interestingly, a side topic, I've been looking at some of the research with coronavirus, and there are a few papers that have said the reason why it works with reducing pain in rheumatoid arthritis is because it's creating an alkaline environment in the cells, which is quite fascinating.
Interesting, yeah. And that goes back to good dietary choices again, doesn't it?
Yes. So what can we do? So diet is absolutely the foundation, and bringing in a lot more vegetables. So that theory of alkalinity, bringing a lot more vegetable smoothies in, and salads, and less meat. Although the autoimmune protocol is basically meat. It can be fish, chicken, red meat, and vegetables. That kind of simple paleo, but the key is far more vegetables and getting rid of the refined sugars,
which makes complete sense.
Yes, for everyone.
Okay, so we're looking at a more alkaline diet, which increasing your vegetables and fruit and veg is going to do that. I think if you are going to have something like red meat in the diet, then you'd be looking at your grass-fed red meat or your organics, so you've got a higher omega-3 ratio, and I think that omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is very important overall for these patients to keep that inflammation down. Okay, and you've had a bit of your own experience with rheumatoid arthritis yourself, a little bit of a personal journey yourself, and perhaps you could talk a little bit about that and maybe a few pearls of wisdom for our listeners.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we're all human, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses, but definitely mine are, one area of it is inflammation and gut issues. So when I experience the flare-ups, without a doubt, it's connected to diet. So my daughter and I, we have a little weakness for peanut butter out of the jar, and that is a classic for inflammation.
Mm.
And so we will occasionally get one, and we'll rate it in the cupboard, and guaranteed, if I did it 2 days in a row, my joints just flare up so much that I can't type, and I know immediately I have to stop and repair the gut straight away. But it works very quickly. Pretty much within hours to a day, the inflammation will start coming down. And it's just a reminder, you've been having too much coffee, you've been having too much inflammatory foods, start having a smoothie. Yeah, so I almost have a smoothie every day, and it's those times when I stop having it, and I start to go off track, and I get a bit stressed. So my pearls of wisdom is set up that foundation of diet, and some key little pieces in your diet for me is the smoothie: celery, carrot, beetroot, ginger, lots of ginger. And it's quite delicious, and it helps me hold my inflammation at bay.
Excellent.
And do a hair test. I have done a hair test, and I've done many of them, and get rid of those heavy metals.
Mm-hmm. And look, it's one of those things, I think, with a detox, that you should try and do that at some point of the year. Spring's always a great time for it, and we have very good herbs again to do that. And I should mention too, reducing inflammation, balancing the immune system. We have great herbal medicines for that, especially for immunity. A lot of people aren't aware of how effective herbal medicine is. And then there's heaps of dietary interventions or supplement interventions regarding certain nutrients that really modulate or balance the immune system too. So we've got a lot of tools for this particular condition, and I've seen a lot of success in treating it. And I'm sure you have too. Well, that's great, yeah. Shannon. Anything else you want to add to that at all?
We could go on a lot. There's vitamin D, important to test for that. I missed that one.
Yeah,
there's the magnesium.
Good point.
There's probiotics, there's fermented food, etc.
Yeah,
and a really good quality therapeutic fish oil as well.
Yeah, and look, we could go on, a million things just jumped into my head as you were mentioning those things. So for those of you listening, get to a naturopath, get online with us. We both take online consultations too. And there's plenty that can be done for rheumatoid arthritis, even osteoarthritis and many other autoimmune conditions. Not that osteo is, but it's an inflammatory condition that can be treated like we treat rheumatoid arthritis. And then there's other autoimmune conditions that we can also treat very successfully, like as far as the autoimmune component goes to rheumatoid arthritis in that similar vein. So that's great, Shannon. I think we'll wrap it up there. Where can everyone find you?
Everyone can find me at Cura Medicine, curamedicine.com.au, over here in Perth. And Fantastic. How about you, Brad?
Yep, they can find me just looking up Brad Parkinson Naturopath. You'll get me on Facebook, pop up in Google. They can look at my website, bradparkinson.com.au, and get hold of me there. And I think we'll end episode 17 there. And until next time, bye for now.
See you.